And we continue with some of the top stories on this Monday. And now we speak about Muhammadu Buhari, Nigeria's former military ruler turned elected president. He was a figure of immense influence and, in some cases, controversies. Known for his strict discipline and tough stance on corruption and security, his leadership left a deep and complex mark on the country. Today, we speak to Lagos-based political analyst Dr Abdul-Wasi Babatunde Moshood to speak about Buhari's legacy, his successes, his failures, and what his passing means for Nigeria's future. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Dr. Abdul-Wasi. Let's just first start with, in your view and what you've seen, has been the dominant reaction to Buhari's passing.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for having me. I can tell you that there have been a mixed reaction since the passing of former President Muhammadu Buhari. To a lot of people, they see him as somebody who was very disciplined, very upright, full of morals, and that was down to heart and have the interests of masses at heart. And to a few others who are very critical, they see him as a dictator, somebody or some people felt he was a religious bigot, and some people even refers to him as an ethnic chauvinist. So it was a mixed reaction that indeed we lost someone of his status.
And you, as a political observer, are these labels, fair comment? Has he at some point or the other embodied behavior that speaks to these characterizations of him?
Yeah, different people have their perspective analyzing a political leader. And if you are a leader who wants to rule successfully, there are some distractions that you will not even, allow to distract you. Buhari, as a military head of state, came at a point when the political situation in Nigeria was in a comatose. The economic situation in Nigeria was in a dire straits. And he came at a point with his lieutenant, Tunde Idiagbo, where they introduced what we call war against indiscipline. And every citizen of Nigeria can attest to the fact that that singular act really put a kind of sanity in the country called Nigeria. Before the advent of Buhari in 1983, Nigeria was in a kind of situation where, of course, anything goes. But those, of course, who were political criminals, corrupt politicians, and every other persons, they were able to deal with them. You also recall that there was a law, of course, that it was criticized that he applied the law retroactively. And what was this law? That if you carry a cocaine, that you face death penalty. You see, at times when laws are made, it is not to punish offender, but to serve as a deterrence. You see, after one person was dealt with, no other person was caught carrying cocaine in Nigeria again. So he came at the point where, of course, he brought sanity. So this was, of course, the kind of impression a lot of people like myself and others who supported him when he was coming back, because he came back 30 years after he ruled as a military head of state. And he was coming to a country that when he himself got there, he said he felt he was like in a state of 30 years before now, because he even met in government was overwhelming. So,
and let me jump in and talk about that overwhelming aspect of it, because, as you said, a figure who was seen as a champion of an exactor of order and discipline. And there was a great deal of hope, in fact, belief that he would bring to an end the violent attacks by Boko Haram, the terrorism that ravaged particularly the northeast of the country. But in the end, he was seen as being no match to it. Your comment on that?
Yeah, you recall that when Buhari came into office the first time, about 14 local governments in the northeast were ungovernable. But when he got there with the multinational task force that he instituted, they were able to not only to take over the 14 local government, but was able to restore some forms of sanity to the northeast. And they were able to also push the Boko Haram to the fringes during his first term. And of course, this was about the time too that the weapons that were really required to deal was coming from the west. So you attest to the fact that he was able, the kind of situation he met when he came to power, he was of course able to deal with it during his first time. But this, of course, was not to be the case during his second coming, and there were a lot of things that could account for that. One of such was that when he came during the second term, because of the fact that people realized that it was going, when you want to fight corruption, corruption will fight back. And the corruption did fight back in the instance of Nigeria. And what they were doing? They tried to get at his life. They wanted to kill Buhari. He was poisoned. And the fact that even some people, even when Buhari returned from London, they said no, it's not Buhari. It's once somebody from Sudan that was cloned. So because they were dead sure that the kind of thing they have used on him, he cannot recover.
And that's what I want to zero in. The man who finally came into the helm of power as a civilian, could he live up to the expectations of the man who was seen as a coup leader, as a strong man in the military in the 80s? Because if you recall some of the methods that he used, you speak about the discipline that he tried to instill in the streets through the police. Wole Soyinka himself even described Mr. Buhari's campaigns as sadistic.
Yeah, Buhari as a civilian president, there is no way you could rule as a military head of state. Of course, you recall the fact that even before he came into, there have been a lot of propaganda that said Buhari, he was a dictator, that said he was not a democrat. You see, when you use this kind of words against a president that is trying to wear the gown of a democrat, you see, automatically you will have affected such person's psyche. So when he came to power, he realized the fact that there was no way he could rule like a military. And let me tell you sincerely, if he wants to rule successfully, even as a democrat, you have to have some character of a military, especially in a country like Nigeria. A country where, of course, when you want to fight something, that thing will fight you back. You have to be ruthless. You have to be a democrat, yet you have to be ruthless. Because, oftentimes we make reference to Kaba. Okay, what do you make of what Trump is doing in America? We are not saying everything he's doing is fact. But what I'm telling you that when we are talking about democracy has some character of autocracy. Autocracy in the sense that there are some. That's why somebody like Plato refers to democracy as a mob rule, because he felt that popular opinion that may not be the kind of opinion that will, salvage the citizenry or the country, but the Democrat wants to go into that world, follow the cloud. But a true Democrat, in my own reckoning, is that person that what is right and what he wants to do is going to serve bring about the greatest good for the greatest number of people. You see, in that instance, if you are sure that what he wants to do, you are sincere about it, there are times you don't listen to the distractions of your distractors. So, ruling a country like Nigeria, and elsewhere in Africa, you have to be so a leader that's not only a visionary but focused and at times employed. So Buhari, I was trying to let you know that when he came as a civilian president, there was no way he could have ruled like a military because initially he has been so he has been so dehumanized even before he got there. So
Speaking
there was no way he could rule like
dehumanizing. I want to talk about for President General Buhari as a man, and a man who himself was a family man, but who presided over a nation where there were incidents of, gender rights that were violated. For instance, he was quoted as saying in criticism to his first wife that, "I don't know which party my wife belongs to, but she belongs to my kitchen and my living room and the other room," a reference to, we understand, the bedroom. But was he a man who instilled gender equality to a point where all citizens felt that they were protected and they were free to partake in that democracy that you say at some point he did inculcate, irrespective of the fact that he had to, as you say, apply autocratic tendencies to get order going in the country?
You see, in my country, there is this local parlance that says, that you are not loved in a country, and you are singing, who will support you in your music. So now this of course was somebody that we know was a die-hard disciplinarian, and the fact that he was a die-hard disciplinarian does not by any iota of doubt take away his humanness. You see, even the humane tendency that he had was the fact that whenever he wants to implement any policy, he always have the masses at heart. You see the so-called people that will say they respect gender. What are the ways that they treat women? You see, at times they treat women like a commodity. Even those people that say they respect gender, you see, they use women as means, as tools of advertisement. They use women as tools of entertainment, and they use women as means of. And now see somebody who, of course, a disciplinarian, a humanist, a down to heart somebody. Yeah, in his approach, he may not be diplomatic the way he speaks, the way he talks. But when you go down to the heart of this person, you see the way he has raised his kids with some kindness, okay. And you will see it radiating. Of course, if Buhari was to be somebody that did not value a woman, there was no way his wife Aisha Buhari will be seen in the public. There was no way he will have interaction with party or move. You see, this is to tell you that yet people may be saying something else. You know, I just made mention something that somebody may not be too diplomatic to be used what we call diplomatic languages, and even at the forum. Yeah, of course, it was the kind of. What would you
say he did for the country? And I'm talking about the larger population. We're not just talking about at home, as in for women, for girl children, that said that he was a man who respected equal rights. I hear you say that some people who are better at playing it through what they say, but you're saying he was a man of action. Can you point to some of his policies? Can you point to some of the things that changed, that point to this under his leadership?
Yeah. You see, what you will see in Buhari administration was that, of course, we are talking about this affirmative action. We are saying that women should be given 30% of appointed positions. But you now see that even without Buhari, even other previous successive administrations have not been able to achieve that. But what you see during Buhari's time was that yet he was unable to achieve 30% given to women, but he appointed women into critical positions. During his time, he appointed women as Minister of Finance and other critical positions in the nation. And one thing you give to him was that when he appointed anybody, he didn't always intervene in the affairs, be it women or men. So you see at least substantial number of women in his cabinet. That's number one.
All right.
And number two,
we have run out of time, Dr. Abdul-Wasi, but thank you so much for answering that last question. Dr. Abdul-Wasi Babatunde Moshood, speaking about the life and legacy of former President Muhammadu Buhari, who just passed recently.
1 hour, 1 continent, 1 voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.